I'm Sagrika from BriPublish. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bhavika. I'm an MBA student at IIM Bangalore at the moment. Before this, I've dabbled in copywriting and advertising in general for a few years. So yeah, I come from the world of marketing, have been writing for as long as I can remember. Um, and really, really excited to be here. Thank you for taking out the time to do this.
Thank you for coming here. Okay, so I was curious about the fact that, as you said, you have been doing the writings for as long as you can remember. However, how have you connected the book writing with all of this, marketing and everything?
So Sagarika, I did a degree in mass communication before I started doing my MBA. And that's where I think I really enjoyed the process of learning how to write, being able to translate my very abstract ideas into a way I can communicate them to others. So yeah, the skill of being able to articulate um, all that's going on in your head was something I picked up in once I left home and really lived my college life. And I think this is the first time I've written a book, so to say. Always my medium has been more in like in ways of songs or shorter stories. Be it, I also was a copywriter for many years, for a couple of years before this. So yeah, taglines and scripts and various things. I think this is the first time I've written a book. This was which was so obviously a different format than anything I've done before. So it was really, really interesting myself.
Yes, and also book writing is, much longer and it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of
Absolutely.
more elements involved because, from the start to the end, you have to see that everything binds together. So how was that a different experience from what you've already been doing?
Honestly, it was quite intimidating when I started off. I think the pre-published platform helps quite a lot because it's very easy on the eye and it just makes things like I could start off from wherever I had left and all of that. In terms of the writing process, I think that it was very iterative, if I could say so. It took me like a big chunk of my book. Also, for context, the book I've written is a recipe book, which really is on the cusp of being a recipe book and a self-help book. So everything that I talk about um, is not really a flow like a story. So I don't think I had to worry a lot about details of what the character said at page number 5 and how does it connect back to page number 20, which perhaps somebody writing fiction would definitely dabble with. I think my challenge was to keep it consistent and keep it authentic, and be make it sound as coherent as possible and as approachable as possible for anybody who doesn't relate to like my walk of life.
So, but why cooking? Why specifically cooking?
So, I think cooking is something I picked up. And I have also cooked for as long as I can remember. And as if I can be like as candid as I can, I think food really does dictate a large chunk of our lives. We don't really even realize how much of who we are is dictated by what we eat and how we eat it. So I think I used to be a really obese kid, had a very difficult relationship with food for many years in my life. Went on to I think this was the first time in my life when I left home when I was 18. I started to understand how much agency and how much control food has over me, and how much I can alter it to have like to benefit me or work in my favor. So I think that's where like my relationship with food and cooking specifically played a big role. It's also such an empowering thing, to be able to cook your own meal, to be able to do it on your own terms the way you want, makes you feel a lot more in control of your life. Otherwise, like it can feel really helpless if you do not know the skill of cooking in general. So yeah, that's I think why I picked up food. I've also grown up all around the country. So my family in general has picked up a lot of recipes from different places. We make a rasam as frequently as we make like a dal makhani. So it's been really interesting to be able to push that forward, and like inculcate that in my life as an individual, as an urban young adult who really does not have the same means, does not have the same resources as my parents did. So yeah, it was really, I think those are the reasons why I thought maybe, hey, I can't be the only one who feels this way. I can't be the only one who's intimidated by living in a big city and being lonely and just like overworked and no time to do anything. So I think cooking really came to my rescue. It made me feel more like I'm on the driver's seat, of my own life. So yeah, I guess that.
It's a good way of recreation as well. I mean, it is not just everything day to thing to do. It is more of a
Hmm.
recreation in art. Um,
Absolutely.
have your perspective on cooking or food changed while you were writing the book? Anything that has changed, or anything you look differently now?
I think a lot of gratitude, Sagarika. I think when I started off with writing this book, I was in this third term of my MBA. Still, I'm in the fourth term, and I remember going through the process and looking back at my life before I came to campus. Now I live on a campus. I have a mess where I don't have to worry about food and various things. But when I was writing this book, I realized that there's so much learning and growth that the kid like happened in the kitchen when I was living alone, when I was switching jobs, doing whatnot. It inherently taught me about things that I like, things I am willing to be patient for, things I want to cut corners around, things that aren't very important to me. How much of method and recipes do I stick to? How much of it is just figuring it out along the way. Yeah, I think it just filled me with so much gratitude for my past, and how now today I have a much healthier relationship with food, and it's an outcome of all of that. I don't think I acknowledged that before writing this book, and I do think that that's a great great outcome of like having written it.
It is like a different sense of independence all along when you can actually think and cook and do it for yourself instead of getting dependent on others or the ordering services or whatever it is.
Absolutely. It
So
also is such a beautiful way to convey love when you
yes,
cook for someone, when you cook for your parents, you cook for your siblings, and you take in account their spice tolerance, let's say, or their likes and dislikes and whatnot. And it's such a beautiful way to show that you're there and you care and all of
yes,
that.
even daily cooking
Very
gets
nice.
interesting with that. Okay,
Absolutely.
so have you done any experimental cooking or something where you had when you said just that you had to figure it out? So how does that come along for you?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. So in the book as well, I talk about cooking philosophies, which largely talk about how there are different mindsets and approaches that come along as you're a routine person like who's cooking every day. So one of them is called finish what's in the fridge, which talks about how everything that you are cooking is only dictated by your want to finish your groceries. Because if you don't finish them, they are going to go to waste and you do not know what to do. The next day you'll feel really guilty and whatnot, right? So I think lots of my recipes do like the ones that I have no gourmet experience. I'm an MBA student. So there is definitely no chef like element to this book or the recipes. They're all very
But that is what makes it relatable because we are all doing it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think one day I realized that I'd made dough to make chapatis, and it was just sitting there, and I had no interest or energy to make chapatis ever again. And I was really worried this dough will go to waste. And I figured out something, saw a couple of things on YouTube and whatever. And I realized that why don't I just boil this, make it look really fancy and boil this, and it'll just really resemble a pasta which I can then put in like a pasta sauce and call it a day. And it really worked out quite well. So yeah, very small, small things like that. Being able to understand how different ingredients work with each other, how much of what comes in where, stuff like that. Very, I think, uh, very iterative. I started making sandwiches with leftover curries and leftover sabjis back at home, or started to use my leftover rotis as nachos or tortillas and put fillings in them and make them look fancy. So much of it is just branding, you're tricking yourself into believing that wow, you really
Also, I've
planted.
realized, that when the food looks a bit presentable, a bit good on the plate, then you also
Mhm.
want to eat it. If
Absolutely.
it's just dumped in there, you would not
Yeah.
want to eat it. Okay.
100%.
So, how do you connect the idea of cooking and self-help in your real life?
That's a, a very loaded question, if I'm being honest. For me, self-help started, the self-help nature of it is twofold. One of them is, of course, something that most people can relate to, people who have similar life structures. We all leave home when we are very young, usually around 18, 19, either for college or for various reasons. Of course, comes from a lot of privilege to be able to say that. But yeah, if I think I left home then, and I've also been like, I think that's when I realized that this is also the first time when you go to, which is why you hear this and see this in movies all the time, right? You go to the quintessential college life and you see that the mess food is, nobody's liking the mess food. Nobody's liking the PG food. It's because it doesn't resonate with what you grew up eating. Doesn't, not necessarily that they are bad people or not making good food. They are, I'm sure, doing whatever they can. But so I think being able to realize that you care about what you eat. There are 3 meals in a day, and we plan so much of our lives around those 3 meals. If I have breakfast, I'm already looking forward to what I'll be eating for lunch, stuff like that. So I think so much of our urban lives, when we meet people, whether we go out, socializing, events, everything happens around food. And even though this is such an important part of our lives, it gets no recognition in what it does to us. So I think that's one place where I thought that cooking also is seen as something people don't do alone, or especially in an Indian context, you always see cooking happening for a family or for like a larger number of people. And I was left all alone living in my tiny little house in Bombay and not knowing really why is it that I'm cooking for one person. Nothing works when you're cooking for one person. The kitchens in India are not made to cook for one person. The grocery sizes that you get. I probably need 3 potatoes in a week, but I have to buy seven because that's how it works. So various ways in which it becomes more daunting than it needs to. I still remember the first time I had to buy garam masala, and I really had no idea how important. I had no idea how big it would feel, how grown up it would make me feel when I like order masalas or like all of these small things. So that was one part of it. And a lot of my friends who were also like going through a similar life structure related to it. They were also finding hacks. They were also figuring out ways to, make it more convenient, make it more fun for them to cook, for them to just enjoy their meals. And yeah, I think that's also another very interesting insight that came out of this, that the way your kitchens are arranged, when we make fun of it all the time when you look for things in the kitchen and only your mom can find it, only the person who cooks can find it. And it's very interesting because you have to be such an important part for the kitchen to accept you, for you to have it on your muscle memory that okay, this is where this thing is kept and whatnot. So many things. I think it really helped me as I thought more about it. It really helped me understand and have more appreciation for the process of cooking. Second, that was the first segment of it. Second was that I grew up very obese. So I always had a difficult relationship with food, used it as a coping mechanism, then completely shunned it out of my life when I was trying to lose weight. And yeah, continue to figure out how to how to manage the entire calorie math and everything. So yeah, I think this was a great way for me to also really recognize that this is such a big source of joy, being able to cook for people you love, cook with people you love, being able to enjoy this process, learn new things, add in, like you very rightly said, add an angle of art to it, present it well, think about it, all of those things. So yeah, I think those are two ways in which I definitely saw it as on the cusp of self-help, because it clearly isn't teaching you much more than the fact that everybody's going through this. Everybody should go through this. I really did come from a place, if my brother starts to, I have a younger brother, if my brother starts to um, move out and live on his own maybe in a few years, what is all of the advice or all of the, all of the chitter chatter that I would like to give to him as somebody who's lived that phase of life. And that's really the culmination of how the book went about.
And I must say you have binded it all very well in the book. So about the part of book writing, what is the most enjoyable and what is the most hardest part for you in the book?
Very, very interesting. For me, I really enjoy the process of writing. And I also don't write in one sitting. I try to, so I have a notes, like, on your phone, you have a notes app. So I continue to collate all my thoughts in my notes app all the time. And I find days where I can write, and I write maybe in three cycles. So first, I'll just write a rough segment, like a rough draft of it, and I'll come back to edit it, maybe the second round, and etc. Um, I do definitely like the process of, the aha moment once you've written a sentence or like a paragraph that you genuinely enjoyed writing. I always also write alone. So it's just me and my judgment of what is good and what is bad. I think it just makes you feel really nice. I think that's what I enjoy. Whether or not it actually is nice is a separate question. I what I hate perhaps is the entire, like, I think, yeah, I think it's very like formatting and like typo checking, grammar related things. Yeah, nothing very, like, yeah, it's just routine stuff, and I think it's not the most enjoyable.
Yeah. But on the contrary, I also feel that, sometimes we will write something and,
Mhm.
when we come back to it, it is just not that cool anymore. Like, in my head, it was very cool. So when I
Yeah.
wrote it and
Yeah.
when I read it the next time, I feel like, it is not that great that I thought it was. So what
Absolutely.
advice do you think would you give to people who are, facing this or supposedly like writer's block? So
Mhm.
sometimes you just want to write, but you just cannot, and you're just procrastinating all the time. So, what advice do you give to people like those?
I remember reading this. I don't think I'm really in a position to advise
I think
anybody.
you have
But
got achievement as a writer. So,
fair enough. No, I think as somebody who has had to write a lot in different manners, what I do understand, and this is something I also very recently, a friend of mine taught me about this, is called the taste gap, which basically talks about how, as a consumer of, let's say, books or music or whatever, right? We consume content at such a high speed that our tastes are much more evolved and nuanced. So the kind of things we like and what we appreciate are usually much higher than what we perhaps are in the creation side of things. So I might not, for example, let's say, let's take a sport. I might not play tennis um, as well as the kind of people I appreciate. I am not going to be as good as the writers and the artists that I admire in the first go because I'm doing it for the first time. I am also not perhaps, not perhaps live the same life or, have the same training or the entire, like the ecosystem of writing or creation doesn't exist, which other people might do. So this gap exists, especially for people who are starting to write. So, one thing that helped me is quite a lot. Even while writing this book, was I struggled with taste gap quite a lot. I was like, this doesn't sound like the nicest thing to say, or the most like the coolest, like you said, the coolest thing to say. I don't know if this is impressive enough, this is fun enough. Why would anybody want to really read this or whatnot? But I think I realized later on that this is coming from so much of my taste gap bias, because I read quite a lot, and that's making me feel this way. So that's when I started to realize and celebrate that just the idea of creating something and putting it out in the world also needs to be recognized, also needs to be celebrated. It's not easy to be able to write 80, 90, 100, 500 pages of anything, honestly. It's all your thoughts, and it's really like it can feel cringe if I were to say so, but it's it only by doing this many times will you be able to solve for the taste gap, if that makes sense. What do you
Yes.
think?
I mean, it does make sense. And also, I feel like, when you're reading, you also feel that, this, I want something of my own. So the feeling of just, even if it's cringe, just the feeling that, I have written it or I have put in efforts for it or it is my thoughts is
Yeah,
something really beautiful for me. That's what I think. Um,
absolutely.
One last question would be, what do you want your readers to take from this book?
I actually talk about this a little bit in the book as well. What I do want anybody reading this book to take away is that I think we have also, because recipe books as a concept have always been very learning oriented. You pick up a recipe book to learn a great recipe, which you assume is already best tasting, has been approved by thousands of people who have the right skill set and, you know, credits to be able to, like, for it to get published and exist in the world and whatever, right? The reason why it's a recipe book is because it wants to normalize the idea that not every cooking, not every recipe, not every meal needs to be adhering to the body standards of beauty standards of food, if I
Hmm.
were to say so. you know it can be normal, it can be, and that is charming in its own way. you know that's one thing that I definitely want people to take back, because the more you look at how the world is working, it really doesn't seem like, I think people having to cook for themselves, people having to live alone and going through this phase of life is only going to get more intense, if I could say so. We all, like, I think food never really takes as much priority anymore, because we don't have the luxury of time, we don't have the luxury of living with our families all the time, living with our friends all the time. And it just wants to normalize the idea that there is a learning curve, and that learning curve exists, and you must enjoy the learning curve. It's okay if you keep spiking up and down, but the fact that you're going through it is wonderful, is very much worth celebrating. And I think that's largely all it's trying to do. It's normalizing imperfection in a space where I didn't see a lot of like my struggles being talked about, because I did not, for example, if like a recipe like required zucchini and I didn't have it, it that should, I think, be normalized. I can't be the only one struggling with such issues, or I can't be the only one who's let the pasta run for too long, or does not know what to do with these ingredients, doesn't have like garnishing, doesn't have like all these things. Like you struggle with, not even struggle, I think it's just smaller imperfections in your life. They aren't supposed to get solved in one go.
And these
They
very
are
tiny things, they make you feel that, oh, don't have this. And, just a small thing can ruin your mood the entire time.
Absolutely. Exactly. I think that is exactly like you said. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to tell you that it's okay, it's not the end of the world. Just have the right attitude.
Yeah.
It's trying to instill and celebrate the idea of proactively learning through the process of iteration, process of trying new recipes and failing at them, failing quickly at them, learning from them, and being better the next day. And just accepting and enjoying this process, being able to be a good support system to others who are also going through this process, and building just like a much more healthier culture of how we look at food, how we show gratitude to it, and how we enjoy it in our daily lives. I really do think that people, like, if anybody wants to cook with their best friend or their flatmate, it's such a good way to like break ice. It's such a good way to reconnect and learn about each other. I think that like that's the whole idea here, to know that you don't have to be very skilled to be able to make do.
You know what this podcast has actually helped me in learning is, yes, now I will also look at recipe books in a different way. So I've always liked cooking. That has always
Uh-huh.
been very therapeutic and nice for me. But the fact that recipe books can be looked in such a different angle is really beautiful, and it has helped me a lot. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for this.
Thank you
It
so
was
much. That's
really
really,
great
really
talking to you.
fun. Likewise, Agrika. Really, really enjoyed talking to you.